Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be joining us from, and welcome to Wise at Work virtual communities. My name is Parneet Pal. I'm the Chief Science Officer at Wisdom Labs, and I want to welcome you to this edition on belonging, connection, and inclusivity despite physical distancing with our very special guest, Emiliana Simon Thomas. Now, I know this topic is top of mind for many of us, and so we're really happy to be diving into it today. But first, if you're joining us for the first time and you're new to Wisdom Labs, we are a San Francisco-based company solving for stress, burnout, and loneliness in the workplace using the science of mindfulness, resilience, and compassion. And we build communities of practice just like this within organizations globally. And our aspiration is to increase mental, emotional, and social well-being. A lot of you have been joining us every single week, and we're really happy that you are back with us. This is really our response to COVID. This is our effort to help all of us come together to learn and practice and to connect, and really to imbibe the wisdom of many wonderful teachers who are generously donating their time to share their expertise with us. Now, please use the chat room throughout the session and start posting your questions so that I can take a few of them at the end and post them to Emiliana. I am so honored now to introduce Dr. Emiliana Simon Thomas. She's the science director at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. She's a very accomplished researcher and teacher. She is widely published, including co-editing the Oxford Handbook of Compassion Science. She also teaches the very popular Science of Happiness course and the Science of Happiness at Work certificate series on edX. And really, I think, most importantly, she is the world's leading authority when it comes to human prosociality. And these are the qualities of kindness, empathy, compassion, and generosity. As I've gotten to know Emiliana in the past couple of years, I think what's really blown me away is not just the depth and breadth of her expertise, which will be very clearly seen as she walks us through the session, but really it's her incredible humility and how she shows up in the world, which is such an inspiration for me. And I feel that she's such a great embodiment and example of all the principles of prosociality and kindness and compassion that she teaches. So thank you again so much, Emiliana. We're so happy that you're here. Welcome, and please take it away.
Wow. Thank you, Parneet. What a delightful introduction. It's always wonderful to be referred to as the world's expert in anything. I will say that most of what I talk about, I can only say because I have such a wonderful community of colleagues and fellow researchers and thinkers and thought leaders who do incredible work. And Parneet, I want to thank you for including me in the Wise at Work Communities program. It's so important for us to be supporting each other during this time. So in talking about social connection, I really want to walk us through a couple of key findings just to lay the groundwork for why this is such a crucial topic. This figure that you're looking at is from a meta-analysis paper that analyzed people's responses to an evaluation of their kind of interpersonal style, the way they think about themselves and other people, and the potential for interaction in social environments. And on the left column, you see the three words secure, avoidant, and anxious. These are three main social styles that people adopt over the course of their lives as a function of the experiences that they've had with their caregivers, the experiences that they've had in their social environment. People who are in the secure category tend to feel safe. They tend to trust other people. They tend to look to others as potential collaborators. They are willing to take risks, knowing that other people are likely to support them. In the other two categories, which are sometimes called insecure, but are broken down here into avoidant and anxious, it's somewhat self-explanatory. People who fall in the avoidant category tend to just distance themselves and be aloof and protect themselves from any possible vulnerability. People who are anxious tend to worry all the time that their social connections are not reliable, that they're not going to be sustainable sources of support. And on the rest of the figure, what you see is a class of different mental challenges that people end up with in lives, depressive disorders, anxiety, substance abuse. And the numbers in the middle of the figure represent the odds ratio, which is how high is the risk that you're going to end up in one of these categories. And the point of this figure is that if you're securely attached, if you have that orientation towards your social world, the number is less than 1, right? You're less likely to be depressed. You're less likely to end up anxious, and you're less likely to find yourself in a situation where you take on an unhealthy relationship with a substance. Being avoidant or anxiously attached, you're more likely to end up with one of these lifelong challenges. So this is just to say that over the course of life, having a healthy, strong interpersonal style and willingness to connect with other people is super important to your health and well-being. I'm going to share a quick second study, and really it can be summed up by the quote on the slide. This is a quote from one of the researchers who has been instrumental in the Harvard study of adult development. This is an 80-year-long study where researchers have been sort of passing the baton to measure the life circumstances and characteristics and sort of health metrics of a sample, a population sample. And ultimately, what they didn't think they were going to find, they found, which is the thing that mattered most to healthy adulthood was relationships. That was the thing that predicted all other benefits. People who had strong relationships were protected against chronic diseases. They were less likely to suffer from memory decline, mental illness, and really just any kind of chronic disease. And so we see time and time again that social connections are so crucial to our health and well-being over the course of life. There's a long and extensive literature on the perils and pitfalls of loneliness. I won't go into this now, but just know that loneliness is as dangerous for a person in terms of their health and longevity as other lifestyle habits like chronic smoking or morbid obesity. It's really, really hard on humans to be lonely or deprived of social connection. All right, so given all that, we're in this situation that we're in right now, COVID-19. And I'm going to just go through 4 ways that COVID-19 is making social connection harder. First of all, the circumstances are super ambiguous. The information that we have access to is uncertain. And what happens to humans in the face of uncertainty is we worry, we feel anxious, we get vigilant, we sort of have our shoulders up and our tension just kind of oriented towards, well, what could go wrong and how is it going to go wrong? And what could go right and how can I make it right? And how can I solve this problem? And the problem is we really don't all individually have the resources or the capacity to solve the problem. So this constant state of worry is very self-focused. And when we're very self-focused, because our attentional resources are finite, we're not available to empathize, to take other people's perspectives, to connect with other people. So it's this emotional kind of milieu that makes it hard from the very outset. Secondly, shelter-in-place mandates, physical distancing mandates are making it really hard for us to have those ordinary, run-of-the-mill incidental points of contact with people in our community. We don't just rub shoulders with people in the grocery store. We're not having those just random conversations or nods or little connections with people throughout the day, even at work. We're not having those little conversations. And those little conversations, those incidental points of contact were really important for shaping our sense of belonging, our sense of being included in a community, for feeling like we're part of a trusting and friendly organization of people. So we don't have those. Third, we're all trying to communicate with each other with the modalities that are available to us, and it's what we're using right now, video conferencing. While video conferencing in many ways is kind of a miraculous technology, given what we all had available 15, 20 years ago, it's still not as good as face-to-face in-person interactions. What we don't have through video conference is access to our kind of biological signals. We're not getting as much information from one another. The sort of viewing and exchange is slightly different than what we get to see when we're in contact with each other in real time. It's a little tricky to have conversations because of timing offsets. Anyway, it's not as natural. It can be less fulfilling. And then lastly, if we are either individually quarantining or co-quarantining, because we're not connecting with people as much, it's just a little bit more challenging to maintain our sense of being, our sense of common humanity. We begin to question kind of how essential we are, how essential others are. It's hard to remember who has access to the resources that we have access to. Because we're by ourselves and not seeing other people, we tend to just think that everything else is sort of how we experience it. So getting along with people who we're sharing a small space with, who we're not used to being only with all the time, can also be tricky. There's more potential for conflict and misunderstanding as people use the strategies that they might have incidentally used in this new way, trying to get along. So given all of these challenges, what can we do? How can we ramp up our sense of belonging, connection, and inclusivity in times of COVID-19? I want to start with that emotional part. How can we relate to these real and valid and legitimate emotions in ways that give room or make space for our pro-social emotions, our pro-social experiences? Again, there's always this kind of like reciprocity between self-focus, defending our physical integrity and our safety, and orienting to others. And COVID-19 has put us into this kind of exaggerated self-focus. So I'm showing you a figure from a study where researchers brought people into the laboratory who were afraid of flying, or afraid of air travel. And they had them simply label the feeling that they had when they showed them either neutral cues, and that's just a word that doesn't have anything to do with flying, or a flight cue, something that had to do with getting on an airplane or being on an airplane. And half of the people were told to label, say, I feel anxious, I feel worried, I feel afraid. And when people said those words, when they labeled their emotions, they felt less anxious. So this is just a really clear strategy. Check in with yourself. I feel anxious, I feel worried, I feel upset, I feel angry, I feel frustrated. When we say that in the midst of a feeling, the feeling itself becomes less pervasive in our internal and mental milieu. Self-distancing is even another level of labeling. And this is where not only do we say, I feel a particular way, but we actually try to adopt an outside perspective, third person perspective. Emiliana feels anxious. Emiliana feels nervous, right? When we use that third person perspective, it turns out it's even more restorative. We feel even less upset by the particular emotion that we're in the middle of. And then the last thing I put on here with this picture of Elizabeth Warren is the importance of authenticity, of emotional authenticity. This picture was posted by my friend Erica Rosenberg, who is an expert in the facial action coding system. This is how we understand the configuration of muscles and the expressions that are associated with particular muscle contractions. And what she showed here was what she calls a non-enjoyment smile as being expressed by Elizabeth Warren as she endorses Joe Biden for president. She recognizes that there are certain muscles that are not contracting. What Elizabeth Warren is doing is called surface acting. And surface acting is a way of showing a different emotion than we actually feel. And this is harmful. This is harmful to our health and well-being. It induces cardiovascular stress, and it harms our relationships. We're not available if we're dedicating all this attention to trying to control our emotions and present something that's not authentic. So now I'm going to move to the other parts, the ways that we can strengthen our interactions with other people, given what we know about how COVID-19 is depriving us of certain kinds of contact. Number one, because we don't have that incidental contact with people, we're not walking around just interacting with people in casual situations. We're not going to concerts. We're not going to sporting events. We're not picking up our kids at school. We need to actually very deliberately and actively prioritize time together. So create opportunities to be in the presence of others. If it needs to be at a safe physical distance, fine, but still make that time to be around other people, set up phone calls, set up video conferences. Just make sure that that's actively and explicitly a part of your day. Capitalizing on positive events is another practice that I teach when I offer trainings on how to strengthen relationships. What this means is that when you do have that interaction with a person, when you do set up that meeting, ask people what's going well for them. Ask them to tell you about something great that happened recently for them. And as you listen to them, use something that we call active listening. This means don't try to plan what you're going to say in reply. Don't interject with your own version of a similar story. Don't wait for your opportunity to speak. Instead, really hear what they're saying. You can even reflect back, like, oh my goodness, I heard you say that your friend dropped off a hot meal from your favorite restaurant and it was just such a delight. What did she bring, right? And who did you eat it with? Or when you ask these sort of embellishing questions, you're inviting a person to share more about their experience, and sharing a positive, lightweight, delightful experience with other people is a wonderful way to strengthen that bond, that sense of connection and shared enjoyment. When you're out in the world, should you have the opportunity to go out and wait in line with your mask on or whatever it may be, maybe have a couple of questions in your pocket. And this is what we call small talk. Can you relay to someone who you don't know and you may never know, and you may never meet again, that you have something in common with them? It can be as simple as recognizing something about them that you that you like. I like your shirt. What's the last show that you watched on Netflix, or a movie that you thought was really neat? Or are you shopping for somebody else besides yourself? Really just engaging with people out in the world in this kind of casual and spontaneous way that helps you realize that sense of common humanity is going to be really important. All right, so I want to invite us to do a quick little reflective practice right now, and it's on gratitude. Gratitude is that feeling of reverence and appreciation for goodness in your life. And gratitude, while there's a great and expansive literature on how much gratitude can benefit your health and well-being, your social connections, your success in life, your career productivity, it's also most kind of impactful when it's interpersonal. And so let's do a quick little reflection together. If you're comfortable, sort of just taking a deep breath, relaxing your shoulders, feeling your body wherever it is in the room. Inhale, fill up your chest and your belly. And as you exhale, exhale a little bit more slowly than you inhaled. When we do this, we activate the part of our autonomic nervous system that is responsible for supporting our sense of affiliation and safety. It's the peripheral nervous system. And with this state of kind of contentment and relaxation and affiliative intent, bring to mind something really good that has come to you that has been the result of another person's effort. It can be anyone, and it can be from any time. Something good. And in your mind, describe internally what the person did. So name it. Name the action or the effort or the activity that the person did that led to some kind of good outcome for you. And once you've got that brief description in your mind, take the next step of acknowledging that person's effort. So what did that person need to extend in order to perform whatever act they performed in order to benefit you in some marked way? What did they forego in order to be able to perform this for you? What did they sacrifice in order to do whatever they did that brought out something good for you? And then the third part of the practice is to reflect on the goodness. Like, what came of their action? How did that other person's actions actually benefit you? So I like to call that practice gratitude 1, 2, 3. And we just did it as a reflection. And what I'd like to ask of you moving forward throughout your day and your week is to maybe translate that reflection into an expression. Next time you have the opportunity to share or extend or express your gratitude to another person, try to bring in these three components. So describe to them, relay back to them what they did, acknowledge the effort that they extended in order to do what they did, and explain how it benefited you. It takes maybe 45 seconds instead of 3 seconds, which we usually might be willing to extend in saying thank you to someone. But it's well worth the investment in terms of its benefit to you, to how you feel, benefit to the other person, and to the strength of your bond with that person. So I want to share a couple other exercises and opportunities for things that you can do to increase your belonging and connection and inclusivity during COVID-19. Number one, there's this delightful growth of what's called quote unquote COVID kindness, right? I put in the hashtag there. These are really notable ways that people are taking on specific acts of generosity and kindness out in the world. Again, planning for them, committing to them, and performing them in order to benefit others. So at the most simple version is being available to other people who you know might be struggling or suffering in a particular way, offering your presence and support to them. There are more kind of specific actions people have been taking and that you could also take on, ordering supplies for another person or shopping or delivering if you have that available to you, sending photos or letters or art or some kind of expression of friendliness and affection to others is another valuable kind of way to be generous and kind during COVID-19. And again, because we can't just do it spontaneously the way that we might have, just for example, bringing a colleague a cup of coffee at work, we need to be a little bit more deliberate about it, working these acts of kindness into our daily routines. Compassion and consolation, these emotions that connect us to our pro-social urge to care for vulnerable others. Sometimes we need to strengthen them. And this is why I put the via meditation in parentheses on this bullet point. Actually strengthening our impulse, our tendency to orient to other people's suffering and awaken that urge to caregive and to support and console is a way to make it more likely that that's going to happen when we do encounter other people's suffering. And it turns out, while many of us can walk around thinking that extending compassion is something that is depletes us or is somehow draining, what the research shows is that when we extend compassion, we actually open ourselves up to what's called the warm glow, a feeling of meaningful contribution and warmth and purpose that's connected to that capacity, that sense of power that we have in helping others and serving others. And then finally, for those of us who are co-quarantining in close quarters with others, or even those of us who are exposing ourselves to lots of social media where we're interacting with people, there is just a greater likelihood of conflict emerging. And there are skills of addressing and resolving conflict that are super valuable in this time of COVID-19. We can all get better at apologizing. We can all get better at forgiving. You see these little thumbnails that are on my slides, they come from a website called Greater Good in Action. And Greater Good in Action has this library of different practices with really clear instructions for how to do them in case you want to learn more about what it takes to deliver a good apology. The last study I want to show you is a research project that looked at how life satisfaction changed in relationship to taking on sort of practices or activities or exercises that were thought to benefit sort of happiness. And what the plot shows on the orangish red line is that when people engaged in practices which were socially engaged, which were about strengthening that prosociality, about connecting with other people, the impact on life satisfaction was more robust, was more remarkable than when people took on non-social strategies. So this is just to show you that it's not just about trying to be a nicer person out in the world. It's also about improving your own quality of life. When we tap into and prioritize and invest in our pro-social states and behaviors, we benefit, others benefit, our relationships benefit, and the community benefits. I'll close with just letting you know that in 2 days, the Greater Good Science Center is hosting a full day event on some of these strategies, on how we can learn how to spend time together in ways that enable us to find common ground, to bridge differences, to understand each other, and to come up with collective solutions to some of the problems that we face. I know right now there are some polarities that are exaggerated by the COVID-19 challenge. And so again, it's incumbent on us to learn the skills and adopt the strategies that we can, that can help us find that common thread that we're going to need to move into the future in a more constructive and positive way. Thank you so much. It's such an honor for me to get to talk about the topic that is so important and meaningful to me, and to feel like what I'm doing matters and is contributing to other people's well-being out in the world. So I'll stop sharing now and hand the mic over to Parneet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emiliana. And I just want to say, I so appreciate, again, the detail and how thorough you are, how well you understand the topic, but you also have this incredible ability to simplify it and really translate the science in a meaningful way for all of us. So thank you again so much for doing that. And I've been reading the comments and just seeing how everyone has been taking notes and is really appreciating the specificity of what you've just shared. I know we're coming up on time, but just one quick question for you is, how do you see human relationships evolving, given that we are going to have more virtual connections moving forward? That's just going to be part of the new normal. Zoom is going to be part of our lives, whether we like it or not. And so what can we do to make sure that we kind of maintain that kind of closeness that we so desire?
Yeah, well, I think Zoom is going to have to become less business-like, and maybe what that term itself, business-like, is just going to shift on its own right. I think we're going to need to be more authentic and genuine over Zoom. I really do hope for a technical solution to the eye contact problem over Zoom. While I would love to be looking right in your eyes as I'm speaking, Parneet, I need to look at this little green light on my camera so that you feel like I'm looking right at you. And this is a barrier to our sense of meaningful exchange and my ability to understand what you are feeling and how you are receiving what I'm saying. And so there are some technical issues that I do kind of put as a challenge to our engineers out in the world. And then I think for us as individuals, we're just going to have to bring it. We're going to have to bring more feeling, more connectivity, more authenticity, more supportiveness, more genuine conversation into our virtual communication. And this may mean adopting or assigning a bigger role to what's often called social and emotional intelligence to our education moving forward. We just have to compensate with extra skill and tools for what we are not going to have access to the same degree that we have in the past. I think because humans are fundamentally ultra social, because we have evolved to work in collectives, to be in groups, we will achieve this. We're not a solitary species, so we'll figure it out, and we'll do the work that it's going to take to maintain these strong, lifelong bonds that help us survive and coordinate our efforts and work together to solve the problems that we face in the world.
Beautiful, thank you. And I think that reminds me that one of the upshot, I think, of COVID has been it's been a reminder to us of our interconnectedness. I think when, this was something we were not probably thinking of before, but more of us are really focusing on that now. So hopefully that's one silver lining. Thank you so much, Emiliana. This has been absolutely brilliant. We're so grateful for you and your time and the work that you do. And for all of you in the audience, if you want more of Emiliana, you can listen to her Happiness at Work series on the Wise at Work app. When you register for Wise at Work virtual communities, all of you have a free 90-day access to the app, no strings attached. So I highly, highly recommend that you download the app if you haven't already and check out Emiliana's series on there. And of course, please follow her work at the Greater Good Science Center as well. If you'd like to connect with us at Wisdom Labs, please send us an email at info@wisdomlabs.com. We love hearing from you. And please join us next week when we will be spending time with Mark Coleman. And he'll be talking to us about beauty, joy, and resilience in the midst of adversity using the healing power of nature. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. It was lovely to have you. And thank you again, Emiliana. It's been beautiful. The practice really has set the tone for my day. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Take good care. See you next time.